social listening is the very clever way that artificial intelligence monitors our social media comments and then spits out data on popular topics or people and the way that we feel about them. It can be a powerful political tool that can be the key to tailoring a campaign to ultimately win an election. Social media expert Jess Maloney's company gathers information in exactly this way and joins us to tell us more. Good morning.
Good morning.
I mean, to me, this sounds a little bit icky.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it sounds like because we're using words like AI and algorithm, and it all sounds a bit technical and kind of data
and listening.
It feels quite scary. I'll be the first person to admit that. But I actually, for me, this has been an amazing tool because I think it depends on what you're using this data for. And theoretically, if we think about New Zealand, we've got 75% of the population who tune onto social media for more than 2 hours, or for just under 2 hours a day. So it's a huge portion of us. And so the way that we talk about issues, the way that we talk about leaders, the way that we talk about politics is actually something that can be looked at in kind of a high level sense to understand how people feel about things. And there's some great news in that, you know, like I think we've seen recently with things like the protests, for example, where social media has been really key to people telling that story and for us to actually look at the data and go, this is how people feel about this issue. So then how could that influence our leaders, I guess?
How accurate is this?
It's definitely, it's both science, it's science and art kind of meeting in one place, because it's the psychology of people that takes the time to kind of work through. And I think when you're working with something like an AI algorithm, you are very much dealing with you know, a robot who basically looks for words, reads what sort of sentiment is around it, and then collates that into kind of graphs and data that you can read as a person. You do have to dig into that and kind of, you know, one of the things that they've done with this is the tool that I use here is made here in New Zealand. It's called Zavvy, and they basically had to train the AI algorithm to recognise New Zealand slang.
Right.
Because of course we say things like mean, and we mean that in a really good way.
Yeah.
Like mean. Yeah, it's mean. Yeah, exactly. And so if you've got to be able to kind of look at it from a data point of view, but then have that kind of human element to it as well to help you understand what you're actually looking at. And then of course there's no point in reading a lot of data if you're not actually going to do something about it.
If we look at this in a political context and maybe leading up to obviously the election this year, do you think that this tool would be better at predicting what's going to happen at the election than the polls?
100%. 100%, yeah. Well, from our experience, we have not monitored a single election campaign with the use of this tool that it hasn't accurately predicted where the cards have ended up falling. I was actually here for the last election and did a couple of special things with you guys and did like election night, and we used this data then, and what we could see was that when there was an announcement around the Labour Party leadership change, you know, just a few months prior, the popularity of both Ardern and also the Labour Party went up at the same time, which is something that we were expecting to see with the recent announcement with National, and of course we haven't seen that. So it's been very interesting, and I think that's kind of probably translated into more sort of traditional media, into news media, into how people have talked about it, because when something's a rising star, which it often happens on social first.
So we've got a graphic that we'll just have a look to, and I'd like you to talk to us about what
you're actually
is
seeing.
showing us.
Yeah, of course. So this is my listening dashboard. So it's live. So it basically curates this data in live time, and what you can see there is this is a 1 year view, and Jacinda there is at 443. So a score of anything above 100 means that you're in the game. Essentially,
right.
You're running a race. You're in the game.
She is in the game.
So
and this is popularity of leaders.
And this is comparative to the other leaders that you see in this board. So it's contextualised within. So we're not comparing her sentiment to a brand. We're comparing her sentiment to the other people that she's running against or alongside.
What's really interesting is that green thing, which is 106, is not the Green Party. That is just one person, Chloe Swarbrick.
That is Chloe. And I think, I mean, if you look at the way that Chloe goes and talks to her potential voters out there, she's very much does a lot of that on social, and she's joining, I think in New Zealand we have a inclination to be very aware of climate because it's kind of brand New Zealand, so to speak. And so the Green Party policies, what we can do is actually track every single time they talk about anything and then monitor what the response to that is, and then go, well, actually people they don't feel as positive about that, or as supportive of that. So it actually helps leaders. If leaders were to use this correctly, it would actually help them mirror what their voters want, rather than kind of just coming up with policies and throwing it at a wall and hoping it sticks.
So do you have the political parties coming to you asking, do they need to see this before?
Yeah, I mean, this type of software has been around for 5 or 6 years, so if they're not using it, they should be probably asking some pretty tricky questions. It's not the be-all and end-all, but it is something that would complement, say, your more traditional polls, which are done through phone calls. We're all online every day, so if they want to access that data, more than 3 million people every day on social, they could be listening to.
So if you want help with your political campaign, get in touch with Jess Maloney at Maloney and Maloney. Thank you so much for being with us this morning.